Thank you very much. The title of my presentation is about feed efficiency, and it's a question. Is feed efficiency a relevant indicator to assess the role of livestock in sustainable food production? And typically, if we look at efficiency, if we calculate efficiency for livestock, we think in terms of output, growth, carcass, milk, eggs, over input, feed. Meaning that anything that is not in the output is lost, has an impact, can have an impact on the environment. Now, is that a good an indicator? I would say no, at least not a perfect indicator. Because what is really food or feed efficiency? If you look at these people, the food efficiency of these musicians is zero. Your food efficiency is zero. Because they do not want to grow, they want to play music. So the output is not growth, the output is music. Another example, the food efficiency of these giant pandas is also very low. These pandas digest bamboo, very low digestibility, in the order of 30%. These pandas poop 30 to 40 times per day. And in addition to that, they're pretty poor musicians. But these pandas have adapted. They have adapted to a new situation. These pandas have the digestive tract of a carnivore, and they eat bamboo. So it's not just about efficiency, it's also about adaptation of a system. Now, the issue of feed efficiency and the competition for resources is not new. This is a short piece of work from Armsby, who wrote a book almost a century ago, and in which he compared the efficiency of the animal compared to a steam machine. That was the issue at that point in time. And if you read from the fourth line onwards, he states that we have recently been confronted with the phenomena of the burning of corn for fuel in place of the usual use as a food for animals or man. The economy of the substitute conversion might help to solve the question of the ethics of such a substitution. So you can see that the whole issue of feed, food and fuel is not new. Even a century ago, they were already thinking about this. If you look at food efficiency or feed efficiency, this is in pigs. This is the graph on the y-axis. You see the gain to feed ratio, so the output over input, how it evolved over the last 40 years. And you can see that it has increased dramatically, mainly because of genetics, mainly because animals have become leaner over the last decades, making these animals more efficient. I'm coordinating a project called Feed a Gene, and it deals with adapting the feed, the animal, and the feeding techniques to improve the efficiency and the sustainability of monogastric livestock production systems. Monogastrics are, in this case, pigs, poultry, and rabbits. And you can see that we're working on feed, we were working on the animal, the host, we're working on the feeding techniques. It's a project with a total of 23 partners from the EU and China, 15 industry partners, and 8 academic partners. What are we doing? We're working on the feed to develop local feed resources that are not or less in competition with food. And we try to improve the nutritional value of these feed resources by technological treatments, by enzyme additions, and by fractionation, separation, cracking, separating different fractions so that each fraction can be used by an animal that could benefit from it most. We're also working on the animal to develop traits indicative for feed efficiency and for robustness that can be used as selection criterion in genetic selection. Basically, the future is to find animals that do better with a feed that may be worse, because we have to improve the utilization of byproducts that are of poorer quality than corn or soybean meal. So we have to find animals that can do good with fiber-rich resources. We also work on feeding techniques. We want to appreciate, in a positive sense, the variation among animals. And one way to do that is to develop precision feeding techniques. Agriculture has always been based on the fact that we observe. We observe animals, we observe systems. We try to understand this. We try to make predictions what the animal will do tomorrow. And based on that, we try to control the system. Now, what has changed dramatically in the last 10 years is our capacity to observe. observe the animal, observe the system by monitoring in real time. Big data, that's an issue that is coming up now. So what do we do with it? Well, one thing you can do with it is try to appreciate the variation among animals and use that in the prediction and in the control. What you see here is a graph of the change in the digestible lysine requirement of a pig relative to its body weight. So you can see that lysine is an amino acid, the animal needs that. You can see that the requirement of that amino acid declines with increasing age. Now, you see also a picture of a group of pigs. You can see small ones, big ones, but they all are fed the same diet. Now, how are you going to feed this group of pigs? Are you going to feed them according to the requirement of the average animal? Or are you going to feed them to the requirement of the animal with the lowest requirement? You can do that, but then you penalize all but one animal. You can feed them to the requirement of the animal with the highest requirement. And if you do that, you have great performance, but you lose a lot of resources that other animals cannot use with an environmental impact. So what is precision livestock feeding? Well, what we try to do is use that information technology of monitoring the animal about its state, how much can it grow, how much can it eat, using scales that you see on the left-hand side, image analysis, thermal image analysis, and make a la carte feed for the animal. And if you do that, so you feed animals individually rather than as a group, you can reduce the lysine intake. Lysine is an expensive resource by 27%. You can reduce nitrogen and phosphorus excretion by about 22 to 30%, which is huge. And you reduce the feed cost by 8 to 10%. Well, the idea of precision livestock farming is not new. This is a paper of almost 10 years ago, and it has a great title. It says, is precision livestock farming an engineer's daydream or nightmare, an animal's friend or foe, and a farmer's panacea or pitfall? And I think that question still has to be answered. Because when we come back to the idea of efficiency, we can, of course, think of efficiency in terms of products over resources. But is that what animal production is all about? Because, of course, there are other aspects that have to be considered. We shape the landscape by the activity of livestock production. We employ labor. We try to convert €1 into €1.50 if possible. We also have manure. Is that a waste or is that a resource for crop production? So efficiency cannot be just regarded as output over input. It has to be seen in a larger context. Like the musicians, their feed efficiency is 0 because they have a different objective. And I borrowed this slide from a colleague of mine who's in the room, Jean-Louis Perrault, because that's really what it is about. What are the outputs from animal production? It's not just a product, it's also use of byproducts, services that have been used. They provide resources to other areas, to the soil that we just indicated, for plant production. So efficiency by itself, looking at product over input, is not a relevant indicator to assess the role of livestock in sustainable livestock production. So, what is the role of livestock production in the circular bioeconomy? Livestock production and animal-derived products are part of a sustainable food supply. There is a potential, and there's still a great potential, to increase the efficiency and robustness of livestock production systems. There is no one-size-fits-all in livestock production, because we can use, and it is useful to explore the variation among livestock systems. We have to use differentiation of products and segmentation of markets. These aspects are essential. Information-based technologies such as precision livestock farming have a great potential and are inevitable. It will come. But is society ready for it? We talked this morning about consumers. We talked a little bit less about citizens. This is one person that has two roles in society. He's a consumer and he's a citizen. He will do his shopping during the day. In the evening, he will sit on his couch and have an opinion about food production. And of course, we've had opinions. We've seen the issue of the butter mountain 10, 15, 20 years ago. We've seen issues of people like to have eggs from their backyard, but who wants to kill a chicken these days in his backyard? And of course, this is a picture that I could see 20 years when I came to France. You see a head of a pig in a vitrine selling meat products. I'm sure if you would do this today, it would scare consumers away. So it is important to try to reduce the gap between citizens and consumers, because both have a role to play, but they do not play the same role. And I think it's, if you consume animal products, do it consciously. So with that, that should be the end of my presentation.